You're listening to Release Your Resistance with Bex Beltran, episode 81. Welcome to Release Your Resistance. This is Bex. The only reason why any of us don't have what we want in life is because of our own resistance. Right now, I'm learning how to recognize and release my resistance, and this podcast tells you how you can release your resistance so that you can live the exact life that you want. Let's get started. Are you ready for a pep talk? When I thought about doing this episode and decided to call it a pep talk, I got really excited because one of the songs that I have had stuck in my head so much recently is Good For You by Olivia Rodrigo. And it probably is always on my mind because it's played in one of my current favorite Zumba videos, and the dancer uses pom-poms in that dance routine. So when the idea for this pep talk popped into my head, I thought about someone using pom-poms to cheer us on and make us feel good and get us all excited and pumped up. So let's have a pep talk today. The reason why I wanted to give you and myself a pep talk is because I have noticed, and maybe you have noticed this too, I am personally referring to it as a summer slump. Are you feeling it? But this is not unique to summer. Sometimes we get into a situation where we want to do something. We see the benefit of doing something. We think something is a good idea, but at the same time, we don't want to do it. We have a lot of thoughts or reasons why it wouldn't work or why it's not a good idea. And this is, of course, resistance. I think another maybe more psychological term for this is cognitive dissonance. It's when our brains are trying to hold and keep two competing ideas at the same time. But of course, that doesn't work in the long term. It creates a lot of tension and stress, or maybe it does. We probably all live with extended episodes of cognitive dissonance, and that's why we feel tension and stress. So cognitive dissonance is one of my favorite concepts from psychology. In fact, one time I was at a work training and the trainer asked a seemingly obvious question that she assumed everyone would just immediately shout out the same answer to. She asked, what is the basic psychology principle that we all learned in Psych 101? And I answered, cognitive dissonance. Well, that wasn't the right answer. That wasn't what she had in mind. It was supposed to be nature versus nurture, which is, of course, also a basic psychological concept. But cognitive dissonance is still one of my favorites. I love thinking about metaphors for why and how we think and act. So for today's metaphor, I want you to imagine two teams playing tug of war. Do you remember this game from when you were a child? Or maybe as an adult, I don't know. It's two teams. They are standing in a line facing each other. They have a rope. The rope has a piece of tape or string in the middle, and then there's a mark on the ground, and whichever team can pull the rope and get the other team's section of that rope to pass that mark, that middle mark on the ground, that team wins. They have overpowered the opposing team. And actually, now that I'm trying to describe it, I'm realizing I don't actually know the specifics of the rules of tug of war, but I think we can all agree that on that visual, right? You have two opposing sides, each side pulling with all of their strength to try to get the other team onto their side. This is the metaphor that I am offering for cognitive dissonance. When we have an idea in our mind, we have a thought, we have a suggestion, and we think, yeah, that would be really beneficial. Yes, I think I should do that. Yes, there would be so many great outcomes as a result of doing that. But then there is the other opposing team of thoughts and reasons that says, no, you wouldn't be able to. No, that won't work. No, you have tried that before and it didn't work. So therefore, it will never work in the future. Those are all the competing, opposing thoughts and reasons that may be oftentimes stronger and pull our belief from possible to impossible. When that happens, we don't do what we wanted to do. We don't do the thing that we thought was so beneficial. So here I am offering all of us a pep talk. I am standing on the sideline of the mental tug of war, and I am giving encouragement, and I am shouting things to consider to help win this mental tug of war. This pep talk could quiet the cognitive dissonance and put it to rest. So generally, a pep talk might be generic. It might be, you can do it, go for it, you got this. Those statements might be nice to hear. They are certainly easy for me to say, but unfortunately, our brains are often able to refute those generic sentiments. You can do it. No, I can't. You've got this. No, I don't. You're going to win. I doubt it. Our brains are so good at refuting these very well-meaning, helpful, encouraging statements that we might hear from ourselves or from other people. So my pep talk today is not generic encouragement. It is actual, specific suggestions that can help you overcome those opposing thoughts and reasons on the other side of that metaphorical rope and give you the strength over those opposing thoughts. The first suggestion that I have for you is to notice when it happens. Notice when you start to feel that mental tug of war. Notice that you are experiencing cognitive dissonance and get an idea of the specific reasons that you are giving yourself and believing if you are in a mental tug of war. This means specifically and individually noticing all the players on each side of the rope. You can notice and label and define. There's one thought. Oh, there's another thought. There's a reason. There's an example. There's a belief. Specifically identify and call out and label to yourself each of the players or each of the individual team members on that tug of war rope. An example of this would be this sentence. Well, I did it last time and it didn't work. Okay, so that is a reason, one reason not to try it this time. That is some resistance. That's a belief that's pulling you towards the I am not going to do this thing that I think is a good idea side. Another individual player on that tug of war side could sound like, all these other little details need to be in place before I can move forward. That team member might be pretty heavy. It is pulling pretty tightly and strongly on that rope. A shortened way to say that team member, that reason is conditions must be perfect before I can proceed. If you believe that statement, it might carry a lot of weight on that mental tug of war. And here's one of my own true life examples that sometimes comes up for me when I have a mental tug of war about creating this podcast. Sometimes one of the opposing team members is, I have nothing new to say. I have nothing good to say. Okay, so that could actually be two separate players. It might be two of them pulling the rope. One might be, I have nothing new to say, everything has already been said. And the other one could be, I have new things to say, but they're not very good. Those are definitely pulling their weight in this mental tug of war. My first suggestion in this pep talk is to really notice those thoughts. There are a couple of ways that you could notice them. You could just do what we're doing right now and just mentally bring them up and verbally identify them. You could do it in a conversation with someone else, maybe a coach, maybe a therapist, maybe a trusted friend, someone who is going to point out to you, hey, I noticed that you're thinking this specific thought. Did you notice that you were thinking this? A third way that you could notice these thoughts and identify them and get specific about them is through writing down what you are thinking. Some people might call this journaling. Or if you are not a journaler, you could call it doing a thought download, or you could call it stream of consciousness writing. This works so well for me. It is how I uncover and identify so many of my own resistant thoughts. The other day, I was talking with someone who I had just met, so she was checking out a few of the journals in my shop, and I asked her, hey, do you journal? Are you a journaler? Because some people are, some people aren't, and she told me, no, I don't journal frequently or really at all. I don't want to. That's not for me. But then she furthered the conversation and wondered, well, why do you journal? Why is it such a benefit to you? And I couldn't answer clearly. The words couldn't come out of my mouth fast enough. I was just jumbling over all the reasons and my own descriptions. And now that I'm replaying that conversation, I realize I could have said, I have a few podcast episodes on the benefits of journaling. That would have given her a little bit more cohesive and coherent explanation than what I was trying to say in the moment. I really do get so many benefits and so many positives from journaling daily. And one of those benefits is that it gives me an opportunity to really specify and identify and see in black and white, or usually for me, it's purple or pink or red, whichever color I'm using that day. But it gives me a way to see in writing what I am thinking. Writing down my thoughts gives me a chance to identify individually these specific ideas and beliefs and reasons that I give myself for why I think I won't do something, or why I think I can't do something, or why I think something won't work. Okay, we're halfway through this non-traditional pep talk now. The first suggestion is to get specific and identify those specific reasons that you are giving yourself and believing that's causing this cognitive dissonance, that's causing the struggle in your mind. Identify the players on both sides. If we have two teams on this tug of war, one side is the don't do it and the other is the do it side. And you probably do have some really strong players on the do it side, but there might be more players on the don't do it side. The don't do it players might be much more experienced and familiar. They might have been practicing together much longer. They might have won so many previous games, and they could be stronger. There probably are more of them, and maybe they work really well together in unison. And now, if you are following the suggestion of the pep talk, they are all single individuals, not an overwhelming, inseparable force. The second part of this pep talk, now that you have identified all the individual players on those two teams, the second part is for you to check for accuracy and relevance. These thoughts and beliefs and ideas and suggestions and sentences that you repeat to yourself, are they accurate? Let's go back to the specific individual that we mentioned earlier. It didn't work last time, so that's why I'm not going to try it this time. Let's check the accuracy of that. Does the past predict the future? Okay, so maybe not 100% accurate. Is there a correlation from what I tried last time to what I'm thinking about doing this time? Do those two things match up? Is it a controlled environment? How accurate is that environment? Was the last time's attempt even a failure? That's interesting. If we're saying I tried it last time and it didn't work, is that true? Is that accurate? Maybe that was just the first attempt in a series of experiments. Maybe that was just the first round to learn what not to do for the next iteration of this round. Maybe it wasn't a failure at all. So saying it didn't work last time is not an accurate statement. Another way of checking for accuracy is to consider if you can accurately answer or identify the scale that you are using. One of my resistant thoughts is, I don't have anything new to say. New to who? Is it new to me, or is the scale that I'm using meaning it should be new to someone else? Do I mean new and unfamiliar, or could it be new and familiar, or not new but unfamiliar? Things can still be new for a little while until they become familiar, right? So maybe saying something one time, and when I say it the second time, maybe it is still new. What scale am I using to determine if something is new? What is the accuracy of the word new in this example? This same accuracy check can happen with my thought that I have nothing good to say. Okay, let me see the scale for good. Does the scale go from this is good to, oh, this is no longer good? If something is not good, is it getting onto the bad territory? Who has decided the criteria for something being good or bad? Obviously, I have. Am I able to identify those criteria? That is an example of how you can check for accuracy of a thought or a belief. We can also check for relevance. Back to the new example with the thought, I don't have anything new to say. Is that relevant to producing this podcast? Is that a rule? Am I supposed to only say new things? Maybe I don't have anything new to say, and that doesn't matter. Maybe that is not relevant. Maybe the relevant thing is that I post a podcast episode each week, and I can say whatever I decide to say, whether or not it is new or good. Isn't that interesting how our brains believe those first or strongest thoughts and then stop the conversation? It's as if one team introduces themselves or just makes an appearance on the field, and the other team just drops the rope and forfeits the game without even identifying, wait, we are stronger. We are better. We want this victory more. So I also want to add a little disclaimer here about giving this pep talk. As I was thinking about this, I considered specific people who I might want to give this kind of a pep talk to, and I noticed it is really easy for me to get fired up and give an impassioned pep talk to someone else about what they could do or should do or what would be so great for them. I think the reason why that is so easy is because I am not experiencing their tug of war. I am someone standing on the outside, watching or hearing or guessing how they describe their struggle or the reasons why they think they can't or won't or shouldn't do something. Of course, it's easy for me if I'm not in the game. If I'm standing on the sidelines, just like in a tug-of-war game, it's easy for me to just stand there and shout, you can do it, you've got this, go for it, just pull harder, you're stronger than them. But I am not the one in the game feeling the struggle, holding the rope in my hands, feeling the pull from the other side and thinking, ooh, I'm not sure if I'm strong enough. I'm not sure if we can overcome this resistance. I am not using this peppy metaphor as a way to downplay or diminish resistance, doubt, and fear. I hope this pep talk gives you some strategies to win your next tug-of-war game. And the final thing that I want to say about this, even though I am trying to get you all fired up, to reassure you that you can overcome your resistance, you can notice the inconsistencies in your thoughts and beliefs, and you can check the accuracy and confirm if something is relevant and figure out if something should be discarded. I just want to also share that none of this is really a problem. Having this mental tug-of-war, having cognitive dissonance is part of our human condition, and I am not saying that you should rush to overcome your resistance. I'm saying you don't have to add more resistance. You don't have to resist your resistance. It doesn't need to be battled against or overcome. I have loved incorporating the lesson that I learned from Tosha Silver earlier this year that all delays are beneficial. If you notice yourself delaying on something that you think could be helpful or you think is a good idea, and then you beat yourself up or you blame yourself because of delaying it, if you notice, oh, this is my own resistance that's holding me back, that's terrible, why am I resisting? None of that blaming and berating is helpful, right? So I am just sharing that I don't think this is a problem unless it's something that you are noticing that you are ready to release. Unless you are thinking, okay, now I'm ready to consider my options. I'm not trying to tell you that you should be doing anything differently or that it's so easy. I'm just trying to offer, if you are noticing a struggle and if you do feel like you're ready to experiment with releasing your resistance or dropping that struggle, here are some specific pep talk suggestions about how you could do it. And just because I do also like to be encouraging as well as educational, I believe you can do it. You have got this. You're stronger than you think. Go you! Let me know what came up for you as you listened to this pep talk. Do you prefer the specific suggestions or the general encouragement? Do you have any resistance to identifying the individual members of each side of the battle? Is there any reason why you wouldn't want to check for accuracy and relevance? Share your reactions and your questions with me through email at hi@bexb.org or in the comments in the show notes for this episode at bexb.org. That's BEXB.org/pep talk, PEPTALK. Thank you for listening today. I am wishing you a safe passage through the summer slump or any slump, if you're even experiencing one. I'll talk with you next week. This has been Release Your Resistance. Thank you for listening. If you like this podcast, make sure you're subscribed and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Also, think about someone who you know who would love this episode and share it with them. There should be a share button on your app if you're listening to this on your phone. If you'd like to continue this conversation one-on-one or in real time, come visit me on my site at bexb.org to see how we can work together.